Hi, this is Mr. Titanium, i.e. Richard Wagner, your host, Richard Wagner. I am so happy to be here. Today, we're going to discuss the heart. This is the first part of a two-part series, so let's get on with it. The first part, incidentally, we're going to talk about how the heart works. The second part, we're going to talk about mechanisms of disease, so let's start getting on with how the heart works. And for that, I am going to draw a square. I know, crazy, right? But symbolic, schematic of our heart. All right? So, as you can see, I created a box with what appears to be 4 chambers. That's what we're going to call them. And these are the 4 chambers of our heart. And the first thing you have to know is that we have veins and arteries, and we have to understand what veins and arteries are. Veins are simply blood vessels that bring blood to the heart, and arteries are blood vessels that bring blood away from the heart. All right? So blood is either coming towards or leaving the blood. And if it's leaving the heart. If it's moving away from the heart, it's an artery. And if it's moving towards a heart, it's the vein. All right? So we're going to start talking about the venous system, I should say. And we're going to start with where the blood in our body enters into the heart. And it enters into the heart right in this area. Okay? And it comes from below, which is inferior, and it comes from above, which is superior. And so the name of this vein, because it's bringing blood to the heart, is called the vena cava, all right, or vena cava. I guess if it's Americanized, it's vena cava. And I don't know what the correct pronunciation. I think this is kind of like a tomatoes or tomatoes or potatoes or potatoes thing. But nonetheless, this is the vena, V-E-N-A, cava, or vena cava. And we have the superior and the inferior, all right? I don't have a place to write it. I guess I didn't do this good. So it comes in and it fills up the right atrium. I know what you're saying to me right now. Richard, you're so dyslexic. And I am. You're right, I am. You put the right on the left side. And you know something? I did. But I didn't make a mistake. First time in my life, I didn't make a dyslexic mistake. All right, I know this is very confusing, but let me just show you how it works. If we were to hold this up and we were to put this on me right over here. Here, let me do it more like this. You notice that this is my right side. This is my right hand. So this is the right. So this is the patient's right or the subject's right. So when we put it down on paper and we're looking down at the patient itself, the patient's right appears to be our left, if that makes any sense. Oh my God, what are we doing? Anyways, so blood comes from our vein, the vena cava, and dumps right into the right atrium, right over here, and fills it up. And right over here, there's a valve, all right? And the valve composed of what looks like these 3 cusps, all right? And as a result of it having these 3 cusp-like things, it's called the tricuspid valve. All right. It's also called the right atrium valve. That will always work. You won't get it wrong, but often it's referred to as the tricuspid valve. And what happens is that blood will flow through the tricuspid valve and collect in the right ventricle. Oh man, I can't spell worth diddly. But hopefully, Ventrical. Okay, hopefully I got that right. So sorry about that. The right ventricle, I'll just say RV. Okay. And what happens is that as the blood collects in here, we get ready for compression. And when the heart compresses, okay, it squeezes everything, and the blood is actually squeezed in all directions. All right. But it turns out that when it gets squeezed in this direction, it forces the tricuspid valve shut, preventing backflow into the right atrium. However, right over here, there's a valve, and that valve opens up into an artery. Okay. And I'm going to write the artery right down over here. Okay. And this happens to be a very, very important artery. It's called the pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery. All right. And it turns out that this valve here has these crescent-shaped flaps. And as a result of them being a crescent-shaped flat, the name of the valve is called the semiluna, as in moon, semiluna. So it's the semiluna valve, and blood goes through there. And just like before, even though there's lots of pressure, the valve shuts so that it prevents blood from backflowing back into the right ventricle. And so this pulmonary artery takes blood to the left and to the right lungs. And what happens is that this unoxygenated blood, all right, which is going into an artery. So the only artery in our body that takes unoxygenated blood or transports unoxygenated blood happens to be the pulmonary artery. And it takes the unoxygenated blood away from the heart and to the lungs. And the lungs are where the blood, namely the red blood cells, which are also known as erythrocytes, the hemoglobin and bonds with oxygen. And now that hemoglobin with the bonded oxygen can deliver that oxygen to all the cells in our body. And so what happens is that from our lungs, from these lungs, all right, I'll actually kind of draw it. What happens is the blood comes back and gets delivered to all places, the heart. But of course, where else would it go? So all the blood from our two different lungs, and now it's red, bright red. And so one thing that you should know is that blood is never really blue. But when we look at our veins, they often appear blue, all right? But they appear blue not because the blood inside those veins is blue. It's just the way the light reflects off of our skin and the tissues underneath that makes the deep red blood appear blue to our eyes when looking at our own veins. So for convenience, we're going to call it blue. But all blood is red. It's just, is it a deep, deep, deep red, in which case it's lacking oxygen, or is it a bright, vibrant red, in which case it's been freshly oxygenated? So in this case, this blood over here has been freshly oxygenated. And of all places, it winds up back in the atrium, but specifically the right atrium, okay? And just like the right atrium, oh my God, I didn't mean that. I meant left atrium. Left, L-A, left atrium. Oh my God. I would have gotten that wrong on a test. Flunked the professor. I'm sorry. That must be very confusing. Anyways, fresh oxygenated blood comes back to the heart through a vein. This vein is called the pulmonary vein, and it's the only vein in our body, the pulmonary vein. The pulmonary vein is the only vein in our body that actually returns oxygenated blood to the heart. All other veins actually have unoxygenated blood, like, for example, the vena cava, all right? But the pulmonary vein brings freshly oxygenated blood from our lungs to the left atrium. At the left atrium, it turns out that there's a valve, and this valve has two cusp-like flaps. So of all things, it's called the bicuspid, okay? And the blood flows through the bicuspid, and just like we had before, when the heart compresses, has a contraction, all right, the blood is forced everywhere. But with it being forced everywhere, it forces the flaps to shut, preventing backflow. But right down here, we have, again, another valve, okay? And this valve leads to the most important artery in our entire body. That artery is called the aorta. A-O-R-T-A. Aorta. And we think of the aorta as the ascending, and then it branches down and goes to the descending. But right off of the aorta, the first thing that branches are two arteries that basically preferentially supply our brain with oxygenated blood. All right. And so each one of they lead right off of the aorta, and they go to the right and left carotid arteries, which supply our brain with air. So our brains are always given preferential treatment for things like nutrition, oxygen, and so forth, because the brain is such an important organ. No kidding, Dick Tracy, right? So this is the aorta. And this is the one thing that you want to make sure that blood can get through very, very easily. And one of the problems that we have with coronary artery disease is that plaque fills up right in this area, preventing blood flow to the healthy red blood, oxygenated blood, to the rest of our body. And this is an area of great concern for cardiologists and actually all of us. Anyways, so this represents the way in which our body circulates blood. Just to go over it, from the vena cava, we go into the right atrium, goes through the right tricuspid. Okay, there's only one tricuspid, so I don't need to say why I said right. But then we wind up in the right ventricle, and the right ventricle contracts, and it forces the blood through the semiluna into the pulmonary artery, where it goes to the lungs. That circuit where it goes from the pulmonary artery to the lungs, to the pulmonary vein, and into the left atrium, that whole entire circuit, that's known as the pulmonary circuit. So if you go to a pulmonologist, that's what they're concerned with, that whole circuit. So there you know. So if you want to become a pulmonologist, you're going to be very, very concerned with the right atrium, the tricuspid valves, and the pulmonary artery, and your lungs, and the pulmonary vein. All right? Everything else they don't care about. That's not true. But anyways, this was the first part. The second part, we're going to go through mechanisms of disease and actually how those mechanisms of disease wind up showing up in an electrocardiogram or EKG EKG is the easiest thing. I think they call it an EGG everywhere else. But an EKG, and we'll describe how how that works, how to read it, and what it all means. And we're going to make a lot of sense of it. And it's not going to be hard or anything. But then when you go to the doctor and you see your EEG and your EKG rather, and you say to your doctor, oh, I see this looks da 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 da. He's going to be like, oh, how did you know that? And it's going to be great. You're going to be very knowledgeable and you're going to impress your doctor. Although it's an interesting concept. I never know how somebody who's knowledgeable in medicine is going to be received by your physician. Some physicians like the fact that you're very, very knowledgeable and know a lot. Other physicians take offense to it, or I don't know, they get weird. It's just like, oh my God, the guy knows something. I don't like him anymore. I'm less special. My hands, my brains were not blessed by God. Somebody else knows this stuff. It's just like, yeah, well, somebody else went to school and learned it. And if most people go to school and learn it, they'll know it too. But most of us do other things and have learned other things. And that's just not what we've learned. We've learned different stuff. So now you know all about the heart. I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure to like and subscribe so that you can get the notified for the part 2 of this. And I have a lot of really exciting things coming up. I'm going to do a whole thing on how the eye works, and I'm actually going to do a dissection. We're going to do origin of life on this planet. I've been meaning to do that for a while. I'm working on it. It's actually harder than it appears because I'm basing it on real scientific articles, and they go heavily into chemistry. And I just think that that's going to bore a lot of people. So I want to make it interesting, captivating, and yet maintain its scientific integrity or chops, so to speak. So I'm working on that. That's a good one that's coming up. And I have a lot of exciting videos. So make sure to like and subscribe. I really enjoyed being with you today. Have a great day.